That's a big problem if you're trying to get something convincing in camera.
It looks like a great on-set monitor. I mean, DigiOps will love it.
That's not what's in my head, and the barrier was more deciphering the interface.
And I'm seeing it as if I'm looking through a real camera, that's the bit that got me excited.
Whoa, what screen was that?
I don't know if you're like me, I used to have final.
Yeah.
We know we're always working on the actual file that should be used.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to a breakout session for Beyond the Frames. I'm here at IBC, this is day 2, and I'm joined by Danton. How you doing?
I'm good, enjoying IBC.
Yeah, what stood out to you in the first day yesterday?
So for me, the thing that, because I do a lot of virtual production, the thing I'm really enjoying looking at is the new screens. You know, I think it's always been sort of, the screens with virtual production has always been a little bit of a fight.
Yeah.
What I'm enjoying seeing is this stuff now with really good black levels. I think HDR's now finally sort of bid across, they've got larger colour spaces.
Yeah.
I think the screens are really something that's really pushed on for me.
So contrast levels and black levels.
Yeah.
Does frame rate come into it? Because if you're shooting, do you shoot 24 depending on the project?
Well, 25 because we're in the right country.
Yeah.
So 25 and 50 is, you know, starting to become
progressive?
used now.
Do you 50 progressive?
Yeah, everything on progressive.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I've just seen a screen rate, a large display that has a refresh rate of 7,000, which is pretty phenomenal.
Whoa! What screen was that?
It's a very secretive one. I had to go into a little code room and sign a NDA not to talk about it. But I mean, the refresh rate on it was great. But I think the problem we've always suffered with is the sort of reflective coatings on the front of the screens, always giving it a little bit of a grey. So trying to get a full black out of an image has been quite hard when you're shooting in a virtual production. You know, you put your lights in there and then they all reflect back on the screen. So,
and that's a big problem if you're trying to get something convincing in camera.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've exposed your shot right, hopefully got some depth of field, so any, not moire, but anything that would give it away that it's a screen is kind of masked by your depth of field. But if you've got a massive glare on it, it won't kind of match the lighting that you've got set up.
Then the problem is you try and grade it back because you want to try and get a full black back into the background image, if it's a black scene, and then you end up crunching down the foreground. So, you know,
it's like, defeats the purpose.
Yeah, do you like the foreground so it's a washed out grey? Then do you hope your colour grader can do it? So you're sort of stuck with all those different ways of doing it. So that's something I've been really interested to look at. Looks like they've really improved on quite a few of them now, being able to swap stuff in and out. I mean, we're obviously on the ProArt stand. They've got a monitor which I've been wanting them to come out with for a while, which is SDI in. Looks like a great on-set monitor. I mean, DigiOps will love it, I think. You know? And I think SDI is really important for me on monitors because it's, you know, DisplayPort, HDMI is great when you're in a controlled environment, but SDI is the standard on set. So, you know, to now have a small monitor that we can work with SDI is brilliant.
The form factor is super helpful, right?
Well, it's just so quick, it doesn't break. I mean, the problem with HDMI is, you know, you get it out there on set, cables are only a certain length, people stand on it, they break the connectors, pulls out, you know, SDI, it's clipped in, it's done. You know, everybody's got the cables in their bag, so, you know, that works out really well. Canon have got their new Flex Zoom, which I really like the look of, and that's full frame zoom, which I think for virtual production is really good. It looks like there's some really nice toys. I mean, as I say, I'm here looking at the virtual world. And then computers are pushing up speed and limit, you know, what they can do more now. Yeah, one of
the reasons I was excited about catching up with you here is because I know you kind of bridge the gap between your knowledge of the analog production world, the filmmaking stuff that we love. And if I think back to my time on live action sets pre-virtual production capabilities, I love the spontaneity we can do on set, right? You've got the actors, you've got you're blocking your shots in a physical space. I'm finding with virtual production tools as they get more sophisticated, like I use Omniverse a lot for my animated show, I'm starting to get a little bit of that spontaneity into my CG workflow, which I can't say was the case maybe 2 or 3 years ago because the real-time stuff hadn't really got to the point where it was intuitive for someone like me who's not really technical. I'm not a TD or a CG technician. I'm more of story is my thing really, and artist. So how have you found that the tools, the software tools and the environments, how have you found that kind of bridging your gap?
Probably very similar to you in some ways. I mean, I've only been using 3D tools for 3 years, and Omniverse really was probably the one that I kicked off with. Before that, I had tried other tools, I'd open them up. I mean, my background's still photography originally, director of photography and then directing, and I jumped into it, and they were so complex. And I started to try and, do some video online courses with them, and I just gave up.
Yeah, similar story with me. I would only get so far.
Exactly.
That's not what's in my head. And the barrier was more deciphering the interface, figuring out the workflow, because it felt so removed from the natural, what it became an intuitive way of working.
The look, the way it looks, so
the feedback loop wasn't there, right?
Yeah, so I mean, with Omniverse, I'll explain a little bit of some of the stuff we've been doing with it, but I mean, when I put a camera in there, I can program point A, point B, do the track, and I'm seeing it as if I'm looking through a real camera, that's the bit that got me excited. My focus is working, my aperture's working, all of that sort of stuff the way I would normally. But the big thing is doing it in a real-time world. Obviously, when we path trace and render it out for the final, it's not going in real time. But the thing is with it, is I'm looking at it as if I'm using a real camera, and that's what really got my fancy with it. And it's an incredibly complex piece of software if you want to go that far with it.
Right.
I'm not diving into it, but also as well, because it's got the collaboration stuff, the stuff I can't do, and believe you me, there's probably 99% of it, I can get other people to do for me.
Yeah.
And then it's all live on the Nuclear server, so I can actually see them do the changes for me
in real time.
In real time, and that's quite an amazing thing. And also as well, some of the other software that other people, they've got connectors, so you can link those all into it. So, what we've been doing with it, we've been specialising in doing a lot of digital twins of sets or locations. And that came around because, we went to Namibia and did a shoot there. Now, normally, you'd have a crew of, say, 75 people. Well, in Namibia, they've changed it now because they had all sorts of environmental dramas with shoots. So they've dropped that down to having 12 people. And obviously, companies also want to change their environmental footprint. They don't want to send loads of people. So what we started looking at was LiDAR scanning in sets and using photogrammetry. And we went to Namibia and we scanned in massive pieces of road. And then we shot a load of HDR domes. We take those into Omniverse. We actually have a digital twin of the real world location. And then using physics, using the tools that Omniverse has.
The lighting,
we can actually drive a car up the road and it looks real, right down to dust coming off the back of it. Once that car track is programmed in and we've got it, I can forward and go backwards and forwards on it. I can then program my camera moves up like I would in the real world.
And it's all true to scale because it's a scan of the actual location.
Everything matches. So the other thing we do is we shoot a lot of background plates. And now there's some positioning systems where I can even take the position of the drone, feed that into Omniverse, and then my real world background plate lines up perfectly with my CGI plate. So I'm basically compositing inside one piece of software in real time.
That's fantastic.
And because it's reflecting, it's using the 3D mesh, all the reflections on the vehicle are correct. And it's not just cars we're using it for, we're using it for a lot of other things. We've just started experimenting with food, and that's probably going to take us a little bit longer because the sheen and stuff on the food, and again the
intricacies, right? You're not talking about man-made surfaces or manufactured, I should say.
Exactly.
You're not talking about manufactured surfaces like hard surfaces like buildings or walls or vehicles. You're talking about organic stuff.
Organic materials. So again, and that's where it's worked out really well. Is we worked out how to do the photogrammetry of getting the food in, but then we can send it out to somebody else to do all the materials and get the shines all correct and getting that all. And I can see that all getting updated in Omniverse as I'm going.
Yeah.
So, but the thing for me that really got me was the lighting in it.
As a cinematographer, right?
As a cinematographer, it's a path trace renderer. The light feels real, and I mean, obviously you doing your animations, I found the lighting so fast, and to see it happening in front of you, and that was for me sort of became a bit of a game changer. I mean, when I drop in a sun or a dome, it looks real.
Right, and I feel like the way I set up my lights, even though I'm creating an animated show, all my live action skills of directing on sets, the way lights behave in a space, color and light, I understand it for my animation. And so it's a great way to transfer my skills, not to sort of keep them separate. It's not like animation's one box and live action filming's another. I can kind of use all my skills because of that real time feedback loop. I'm in that paradigm.
When I was DPing them, if we did a large shoot outside, I'm a bit of a firm lover of one large light. I think if you've got loads of lights everywhere, you get very confused.
Yeah.
And I see it. I mean, look, when I first started lighting, I had a whole bag of lights, I could pull them all out, and then suddenly you can't work out what light's doing what.
Right. And
I found it really interesting inside of Omniverse. I could pop in one light, and that worked like the sunlight. And I could actually use things like bounce boards. I could use cutters. I could use reflections. So I go,
because it's so based on physics, real physical lighting.
Exactly. And on the vehicles, we've had dust coming up behind them because obviously the Namibia scene was a dusty road. Well, we programmed in the physics into the dust, and the dust looks like real dust coming off the back of car tires.
Yeah.
The physics on the vehicle as the vehicle's driving up the road is the vehicle's acting the way you would expect it to work. So having all of those things to it is quite phenomenal.
Yeah, and there are parallels to my workflows, like how accessible the physics stuff is really helpful for automating some of the animated effects that I want. I want to go back to something you said about collaboration and seeing people in your crew update the scene live. That's because of the sort of the foundational format that a Nucleus sort of uses, the USD of it all.
Yeah, exactly. So, working on the USD. So I mean, example, we were doing some stuff with cosmetics bottles last week. We wanted to get the shine perfect on the cosmetics bottles, and we had somebody else who's built those sort of 3D models. It was something I needed changed, and all I had to do was give him a call. I was sitting at home, he was sitting at home, in front of my machine. He went in, did the little changes on the same file I was using, and a little blue box flashed up, said, fetch updated USD. Bang, it was in my machine, and I had the update. And we're on the other sides of the country.
Yeah.
So, straight away that was solved. I didn't even have to think about it. So, it's not, and also so that's not giving us confusion with files, because I don't know if you're like me, I used to have final.
Yeah.
And I think anybody probably who's creative always has that.
Yeah.
So we know we're always working on the actual file that should be used.
Yeah.
And then when you look,
but USD's got that versioning built into it, right?
Exactly. I can always go back as well. We're really excited. There's some other tools that they've got coming out, which we're about to start playing with. They've got things like variant managers, which I think with the car stuff is going to be really important. If a car in a certain country prefers blue and in this country prefers white, we can just hit the button and it will do that. And then we've been moving on and using Gen AI inside of it. So we take our scene and we start searching for trees, and we're trying to drop in 3D trees and let those scatter around. So we can change that mesh and change the look of that whole scene really
That's really
quickly.
interesting, because I use the same suite of tools.
Yeah.
It really helps my previs process.
Oh yeah.
But are you going to Final Pixel with some of
this
stuff?
We're going to Final Pixel with everything.
In camera as well, huh?
Yeah, everything's going to Final Pixel. So our render times are, we actually, saying that, they're really not that bad. I mean, I can render out something that might be a finished full HDR 4K 25 frames, 2-minute piece will render out in about 6 hours. Depending on how complex the scene is. But I think that's phenomenal. That's completely path traced, and I mean, normally, so sometimes we've done stuff for car companies where a car commercial might have taken us a month to a month and a half to finish. Because we've already got the assets built, we can drop them in, render it. We've got stuff finished in a week.
Wow.
Which is quite,
it's a
massive
that's an amazing
change.
performance.
And then on top of that, then we can start to drop in the variations: left-hand, right-hand drive, blue color, this color, different variations for
swapping
different country
materials,
around.
even a different lighting setup.
Just change the lighting. We can just change the HDRI dome in the background. The amazing thing is the way that HDRI dome works is all the reflections on the vehicle are completely correct. It figures out, has a thing called Rayleigh atmosphere, which is a little box I tick a lot, and that gives the light the wrap feel that you would get in the real world. And you can literally see it. You press the button, you see this light wrap around the vehicle, and the reflections all come correct.
And are you running all of this with a workstation, like a ProArt workstation, or are you using the cloud? How are you?
No, so I keep it all local. We store everything in the cloud. Our scenes are quite big, so we do jump around. I have a couple of machines there which are working on the ProArt, and then we have a big rendering node, which has 8 A6000s in it. So
That'll do it.
That's a bit of a beast. And you don't want to be in the office when that starts kicking out a bit of heat.
Bet.
It's quite funny, but it's but that thing is purely for rendering, and it's an absolute beast. Yeah.
Fantastic.
We have started playing around with some of the headless node rendering.
Yeah.
And we're looking into that, or we can send it up to the cloud to use as well. Because a lot of our stuff is experimental, I like to be able to see it as it's rendering. And we kick everything out as EXR sequences as well. So everything's coming out in 32 bits. So
well, the high quality real-time renders mean that you're less likely to encounter a nasty surprise in your final render.
Exactly, and we can see it as it's going along.
Absolutely.
And I can work on that file as we're going. So it makes for a great workflow.
So Brett, thanks so much for your time here at IBC. It's been great catching up with you.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. And thank you for tuning in to this breakout session for Beyond the Frames. Look out for some more from our IBC coverage.